Roll call.
Trustee Lang.
Here.
Trustee Brady.
Here.
Trustee Hein.
Present.
Trustee Vogel.
Here.
Trustee Heer.
Present.
Trustee Krueger.
Present.
President Argyros.
Here. There is no proclamation. Citizens' concerns and comments.
Members of the general public may address the board with concerns or comments regarding relevant issues. The person submitting a petition, concern, or other comment shall be allotted 5 minutes to present their points. Mr. Kotecki.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak. We're leaving town tomorrow, so this is my only opportunity. As many of you know, I spent 37 years teaching. Kids always ask me, can we chew gum? I said, no, it's against the rules. And they would ask me why. I said, because people put it underneath the desk and they throw it on the floor. So the good kids won't chew. But there's a small element that always did chew and always did stick it under the table and under the desk. When I look at the ordinance you're looking at for assault weapons, I relate it to gum chewing. Because the law-abiding citizens will follow the rules. The lawbreakers won't. New York passed a law that has mandatory prison terms for breaking a gun rule. Their murder rate went down. Chicago has had a gun ordinance for over a decade. This weekend alone, 5 were killed in 21 shootings. It doesn't work. It doesn't work till the criminals are punished. Why do we punish law-abiding citizens but not punish the criminals? The state had 6 months to pass a concealed weapons carry law. They needed 30 days more, and they needed 20 more days. How many days did they give you to pass this ordinance? 10. Now, why do we have a double standard? Why does the state require all this time but won't give you time? Because they're dysfunctional. They created the pension mess. They can't solve it. Don't fall into their trap with this by passing this ordinance. The only people you will hurt are the law-abiding citizens, not the criminals. You need to ask the state to start punishing the criminals and not the law-abiding citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
That's it, Mr. President.
Thank you. Item number 5, discussion, a report on the financial results for fiscal year 2012 presented by Finance Director Montague. Michael?
As Director Montague approaches the podium, I'd just like to introduce the topic by saying every year following the end of our audit period and receiving the results from our auditors, we present to the board and the public a summary of our comprehensive annual financial report, otherwise known as the CAFR, for everyone to understand how we finished the previous fiscal year. As part of that conversation, we always offer an update as to where we are 6 months into the current fiscal year, recognizing, of course, that our revenues only show for the first quarter of the year. And as Director Montague will explain a little bit more, but just wanted to introduce by saying this is our annual report talking about the previous 2012 fiscal year and introducing an update as to where we are with the 2013 fiscal year.
Thank you very much. Tonight I just wanted to point out that everybody should have received a copy of our comprehensive annual financial report a couple of weeks ago. In the report, you'll notice that the auditors gave the village a clean opinion again this year, which basically means that the report fairly represents the village's financial position as of the end of 2012. Included in the report is a lot of very good information about the financial status of the village. I would encourage anyone to read it, and the residents to read it. I know the board reads it. The notes to the report are very informative, and for those who are not familiar with how the village operates financially, it gives you a lot of good background. I'd like to go through the results and give you the overview of what's in the report and answer any questions you might have. If you want to interrupt me along the way, feel free to do so. The major fund of the village, the major operating fund, is the general fund. And in 2012, you'll recall, the board approved a budget that reflected a budgeted deficit of $961,000. At year end, the actual deficit was $330,000, which obviously is a better result than we hoped for and an encouraging sign as well. I have a note on this slide that just notes that I adjusted the expenditure numbers to reflect the fact that we did a $1,500,000 transfer last year. You'll recall that at the end of 2011, we ended that year with a budgeted surplus of $1.5 million, and the staff recommended and the board approved returning some of those monies to the funds that we had borrowed the money from in order to reduce the deficit that year. So if you look at the CAFR and you look at the general fund, it will appear that we had a $1,800,000 deficit last year, but you have to take into consideration that we had an intentional transfer of $1.5 million back to the capital project, SURF, and liability insurance funds. So taking that out of the equation, the actual result was a $330,000 deficit. And you'll notice that in the last two columns where it says variance, dollars and percentage, we did a little bit better than we expected in terms of budgeted revenues, and we were very close, within 0.2% on expenditures. So those are good results. The next slide breaks the information down a little bit further in terms of revenues, and I just wanted to talk about the major sources of revenue to the general fund. You'll see that in terms of sales tax, we finished the year $229,000, or a little less than 3% better than what we budgeted. Property tax was what we expected, and typically that's the case. We levy a certain amount and we receive that amount most of the time. And building permits were a little bit less than what we anticipated. Income tax was 7.5% greater than what we budgeted. So again, another trend in the right direction. And sales tax and income tax, more than anything, follow the trend in the economy. So that's a good sign. Everything else is all the other sources of revenue to the general fund: food and beverage tax, hotel motel tax, telecommunications tax, all the licenses and permits and fees and so forth. And you can see that we were within 2% of the budget there as well. So overall, we brought in $563,000 more than we anticipated. If you exclude property tax revenue from the equation, then general fund revenue was up almost 7% compared to 2011. These next few charts just show this in graphically, obviously, in a little bit more detail. Sales tax in 2012 was up roughly $400,000 from 2011. And if you look at the first 3 months of this fiscal year, 2013, the current fiscal year, sales tax receipts are up 8% compared to the first 3 months of 2012. Now, as Village Manager Svandilis alluded to earlier, we only have 3 months of sales tax information, even though we're in June. Sales tax is 3 months in arrears. So 8% is great, but we don't exactly know where we're going to end up as of this point. You can see, though, that in 2006, 2007, we hit the high water mark. Sales tax dropped off when the economy went downhill, and it's starting to come back. This next slide shows the recent history with respect to property tax revenue. And in 2012, we brought in the same amount that we did in 2011. And that's because the village board opted not to increase the tax levy in 2012. Since 2004, the average tax levy increase has been just over 4%. Income tax in 2012 was up about $300,000 compared to 2011. And looking at the first 6 months of 2013, we are up 7% over what we budgeted in income tax. So again, a very positive trend. We won't exactly know where we're at until obviously the end of the year, but income tax is looking good so far. And then I created a slide that once again shows all other revenue, the history of everything else in the general fund, excluding the ones that I've already talked about, and you can see that that fluctuates from year to year. It was a little bit down compared to 2011. I just want to talk briefly about expenditures because our goal as a staff and every year is to present a budget that is as close to 100% accurate on both the revenue side and in the expenditure side as possible, knowing that you're never going to get it exactly right. There's too many variables and it would be next to impossible to predict it exactly correctly. But you'll see in 2012 we were pretty close. That's about as close as you can get. If you look back at previous years, we spent significantly less than the budget, and now we're getting to the point where we're getting back to close to 100%. I think anytime you're within a couple percent on revenue or expenditure, you're doing a pretty good job. The thing that I'd like to point out, though, is that it's very difficult to predict where you're going to be at year end, especially 6 months into the fiscal year, which is where we're at now. And the reason for that, it has to do with the fact that we don't have all of the revenue information and obviously not all of the expenditure information that we need to make an accurate projection, but we can get pretty close. But if we're within 2% on the revenue side with a $32 million budget, we're going to be off by $640,000. And if we're within 2% on the expenditure side, we're also going to be off by $640,000. So you can tell that even if you're 98% accurate, you could easily have a $1.3 or $1.4 million swing one way or the other. And that's just the reality of budgeting.
Can I ask you a question, Mike?
Sure.
This one, the bottom line, the two asterisks, the reduced for $1.5 million to the fund balance, that was the dollars that we put back. In 2012, was the actual revenue $1.5 million more than the 32.6 million?
No, the revenue was that number, but the expenditures were actually $1.5 million higher than what I showed here, just simply because when you factor in the transfer, it's $1.5 million higher.
And that's included in the expenditures?
Right.
I see.
So I took it out of that expenditure number because I wanted to show an apples-to-apples comparison to prior years. So I excluded the interfund transfers, but it would have been $1.5 million higher. But
in other words, we ended up with about a $330,000 deficit in 2012. But in essence, it's probably close to $1.2 million of a surplus. No, we actually ended up with a $330,000 deficit. If you include the transfer, it's $1.8 million, but I don't think that's the right way to look at it. Okay. And this slide is just showing expenditures. So that first column is, I think I misspoke when I said that's revenues. These are comparing budgeted expenditures to actual expenditures. And then this breaks down our expenditures a little further, just so you could see how we did by major category. And these are the major categories that make up the general fund. So with respect to salaries, we were within 1%, but that's a $172,000 variance. Overtime was pretty accurate, within 2%, and then you can see all of the other categories as well. The final one on there is what I call everything else, which is everything that's not in one of those other categories and includes things like street repairs and landscape maintenance and energy and things like that. So again, we were within 0.2%, and that's really good. I put this slide up here just so we could have a conversation about the deficit and what that really means.
Again, we finished with a deficit of $330,000, but I think it's important to keep in mind that we did borrow, in a sense, some money from other funds in order to reduce the budgeted deficit for 2011. So had we not done that, had we not transferred $1.3 million from the Capital Projects Fund and reduced the SURF fund transfer by the amount shown there as well, and the liability insurance fund transfer, the actual result would have been a deficit of $2.3 million. And I put a note at the bottom there that shows that we budgeted a transfer for debt service purposes in 2013 of $860,000 from the Capital Projects Fund. And I also noted that in 2014, that transfer will be reduced to $310,000, and that's as a result of the fact that the board recently approved a new financial policy for the Capital Projects Fund that specifies that no more than 25% of the gas and electric use tax revenue each year can be used for debt service. The staff recommended that because we felt that after years of using Capital Projects Fund money to reduce the general fund deficit, that it was time to get back to the point where we leave that money in the Capital Projects Fund and use it for infrastructure. So I put this note up here just as a reminder of that policy, and what that means is that next year there will be less money available for the general fund, and that's going to make it more difficult to balance the general fund. But that policy, I think, is an important policy because we need to earmark as much of that money as possible in the Capital Projects Fund for street maintenance and repair. This shows you the recent history, the general fund balance history. You'll see that, of course, when the economy went downhill, we had some significant deficits. Again, in 2011, we had a surplus as a result of using funds from other funds, and we returned some of that money last year to those funds. 2013, the board approved a budgeted deficit of $400,000. Now, if that deficit is realized, that would reduce the fund balance in the general fund to $13.5 million, which is still almost 42% of annual operating expenditures, well above the 25% financial policy that we have. So even though over the last few years we've reduced the fund balance in the general fund, the village is still in a very strong financial situation. And this shows graphically the fund balance through 2012 and beyond through 2017. We're always doing multi-year financial projections to try to get a feel for where we're going to be in the next 5 years and what we need to do to adjust our policies and how we budget to ensure that we have a 25% fund balance. And this shows that based on current trends, we would continue to draw down on the general fund balance to right around 25% at the end of 2017. This assumes that the board were to approve 7.5% property tax levy increases for the next 5 years. And that's something we talked about during the last budget go-around. So at this point, without that type of commitment to increasing the levy, we would reduce the fund balance beyond the 25%, or below, I should say, the 25% minimum. This is the same type of slide for the Water and Sewer Fund, and what you'll see is that at the end of 2012, we had a fund balance of representing 154% of annual expenditures, which is well above the 25% requirement. The reason for that is because we sold bonds to pay for the new water meter program, and so it's those bond proceeds have inflated our fund balance, but that will be spent in the next year or so, drawing down on our fund balance to more reasonable levels. But even in 2017, we still have very high fund balances, and that represents or means a couple things. Either one, we can pay for additional capital projects in the Water and Sewer Fund, or we can reduce future rate increases below the 4.5% that we've assumed we're going to increase the rate by each year. So the Water and Sewer Fund is in a very good position now to either fund capital projects or moderate our rate increases. This is the 911 fund. At the end of 2012, we had a balance of $261,000 in this fund. That represented 53% of operating expenditures. Policy only calls for 15% of annual expenditures, so we're well above that. This also assumes, this projection assumes that we're going to use $150,000 to $200,000 of general fund revenue each year to subsidize this fund, primarily for dispatching purposes. And by the end of 2017, we will be pretty close to our fund balance target. Excuse me. This is the liability insurance fund. The policy, the financial policy for this fund calls for us to maintain revenue in the fund equal to 200% of the projected annual liability insurance, meaning general liability and workers' comp claim expense. We've been reducing our transfers to this fund for the last few years to help out the general fund, and this projection excuse me, shows that by the end of 2017 we'll be a little bit below our policy. Just get a drink of water here. This is the Capital Projects Fund. There is no fund balance policy for this fund, and the reason for that is because there's no need to maintain a certain amount of money in this fund. The funds in the Capital Projects Fund are intended to be used for infrastructure projects, and to the extent that there's money available, the intent is to use it for those projects. This, as a result of the new policy that restricts the amount of money that can be used for debt service, we have an opportunity in this fund to allocate up to $1.6 million each year for the next 5 years for road projects. And because that's such a pressing need in our community, I think that's something that the board should seriously consider doing. Okay, I want to briefly talk about the village's 5 TIF funds and just let you know where they were at the end of 2012 and where we think they're going to be in the next 5 years. The Crossroads TIF is our oldest TIF district. It was created in 1985 and expires in 2019. We had a negative balance at the end of 2012 of $522,000. That is anticipated to rise to $2.1 million by the end of 2017. There's not a lot of money that comes into this fund. Well, let me rephrase that. There is a significant amount of money that comes into this fund each year, but it also goes back out to the other taxing districts because of the intergovernmental agreement we signed with them several years ago. So the net proceeds to this fund are not very significant from year to year, but there is some money that can be spent on TIF projects in the future. The Lake Cook Milwaukee TIF was created in 2003 and expires in 2026. The fund balance was almost $2.5 million at the end of 2012 and should grow to over $5 million by the end of 2017. Again, this fund is in good shape, and there's an opportunity here to fund economic development projects in the future. South Milwaukee TIF Fund was created in 2000 and expires in 2023. There is a significant amount of revenue coming into this fund every year and not a lot of expenditures. So to the extent that some of our other TIF districts are not producing increment, there's an opportunity here to use this money in the future to create incentives for economic development projects in other TIF districts. And one of those other TIF districts that's not doing very well is the Town Center TIF. In 2012, we actually brought in $10 in revenue, and that's not a misprint. So and we had a deficit of $583,000 at the end of 2012. in the future, that deficit is going to grow because we have budgeted a capital project related to the Dundee Road lighting project. But to the extent that there are deficits in this fund, it can be made up with funds from another TIF district. And then finally, we have the Southeast TIF, which is the second of the two TIF districts that is not producing increment. It ended up with a fund balance at the end of 2012 of $700,000. We anticipate that we will have a deficit fund balance in the future because of the Hintz Milwaukee Water Main Improvement Project. This TIF district is adjacent to the South Milwaukee TIF district that does have funds, so that TIF district could make up the difference in this TIF.
I'd like to add, if I will, Michael, that we do have or are preparing a board presentation for the workshop of July 8th that are going to talk specifically about the South and Southeast TIF districts. That will coincide with a discussion about Industrial Lane. So there are a number of opportunities here, as Director Monchain spoke of, and we're going to discuss those with the board at the workshop of July 8th.
I got a question, if I may. You're showing $1.5 million for a water main improvement project. Why wouldn't that not come out of the sewer and water fund?
Well, it could in theory, but since the project is being done within a TIF district and to the extent that it's TIF eligible, under state law can be used to promote economic development within the TIF district. My opinion is we'd rather use TIF funds for a project like that. Now, the board may disagree with me, but to the extent that you have funds available in the TIF funds and can pay for that project with TIF funds, I'd rather do that than raise water and sewer rates in order to fund the project.
It also allows, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It also allows us to continue doing water and sewer projects elsewhere in town because that money isn't being taken from the water sewer fund.
But it's also taken the incentive to bring development in there because there's no dollars in there either.
That's true, except the incentive is being used as a water and sewer improvement to those developers. So
and infrastructure is a TIF eligible project, and we've
Right,
done it in the past. The Weston project, I think you've pointed out,
Right.
It was a project that probably wouldn't have been built had we not done the infrastructure work that we did in that TIF district.
Okay.
So that's certainly a policy decision and something that the board can debate, and rightfully so.
And you're figuring out the new hangars that are being built at that airport too as part of the new revenue that's going to be coming in there? Because there could be like 3 or 4.
Well, the problem we have in this TIF district is that the base EAV for the TIF is, let me rephrase that. The current EAV for the TIF district is $10 million below the base EAV. So that's why it's producing no increment.
Right.
And even with these new hangars, it's going to take a long time before it's going to produce increment again. And that's something that the village is looking at in terms of what to do with this TIF district, because it's going to be several years before there's any money coming into this TIF district. I use this slide to combine all of the 5 TIF districts into one slide to show you what TIF funds will be available in the future. We had $3.2 million in TIF funds available at the end of 2012, but that should grow substantially by the end of 2017. And again, that money, that presents a real opportunity for the village to fund economic development projects. And then I just wanted to make a brief comment about the SERF fund. The Capital Equipment Replacement Fund had a fund balance of $4.7 million at the end of 2012. As everybody on the board knows, that's money that's used to replace mostly vehicles, equipment, and technology. It accounts for over 190 different items in the budget or in our inventory. And the advantage of having a SERF fund, which most communities have, is that it reduces the long-term costs of replacing equipment because you don't have to borrow to do that. and it also eliminates large swings in the budget from year to year. If we have to replace 6 squad cars one year, but not the next, you're going to have your budget go up
That's what I wanted to check.
significantly one year and then drop the next, so it evens that out. If we decided not to fund the SURF fund anymore, the current funds on hand would run out in 5 years, and then we would probably have to look at borrowing to replace equipment. And then I wanted to give you a update on 2013 because we are 6 months into the fiscal year. We budgeted a deficit for 2013 of $400,000. And as I said before, projecting where we're going to be at the end of the year is very difficult, primarily because we only have 3 months of sales tax information right
This is as of June of 2013, not 12, right?
That's right. I'm sorry. That's
Okay.
a typo. Thank you
Okay.
for clarifying that. As of June of 2013. And since we only have 3 months of sales tax data and only 6 months of expenditures, it's difficult to make projections that are very accurate. But based on what I've seen so far in terms of revenue and expenditures, if I had to guess, I would say we're going to end up with a surplus of about $570,000. As I mentioned before, though, if I'm off 2% on revenue and I'm off 2% on expenditures, the swing is $1.3 million. So it's difficult to nail that down, but that's what it looks like as we sit now. And then I wanted to just remind the board that, you know, we did take $860,000 from the Capital Projects Fund. We didn't make a contribution to the SURF Fund this year, and we reduced the Liability Insurance Fund transfer by $200,000. So if we were to end the year with a $570,000 surplus, that would really represent a deficit, had we not borrowed from these other funds, of almost $7 million. I put a note up there. I just wanted to point out that when we went through the budget process for 2013, we cut our expenditures significantly across all departments. The village manager held his meetings with the department heads, cut their requests, and then after that we felt that the deficit was still not manageable, so the manager asked the departments to reduce their budgets by an additional 10%. And so when we start the budget process, which we've already done for 2014, we're starting with a 10% reduction beyond what we normally would be at. So what may happen is if you see increases in individual line items, it may be simply because we're putting back the 10% that was cut last year. So that's just a warning so that people don't say, why is this so much higher than it was last year? Well, the reason is because we directed the staff to cut their budgets by 10% across the board.
Thank you,
And
Michael.
that's really all I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Trustee Brady, got anything? Trustee Kruger?
Yes, mine's more of a timing question. I think you and many others know that I work in a finance department for a big corporation, and I'm sure that corporate America operates very differently than municipal America. But I know that we presented our financial statements to our board in February, and we're talking about this now in June. And if I look at the auditor's comments, they're dated April 25th, and today's June 24th. I'm wondering why the 2-month lag before we start, really looking at last year, and that maybe now we should be talking a lot more about where we are in 2013.
Sure, it's a great question. And historically, what we've done, well, let me answer the question this way. The way things work in municipal government is that, with respect to finances, that is that we're still processing invoices from the prior fiscal year into about the middle of February. So invoices that would be incurred at the end of December are still being processed in the middle of February. Revenue, primarily from sales tax, which is one of our largest sources of revenue, we receive that 3 months in arrears. So we don't know what our December sales tax revenue was until March of the following year. So in March, we get our December numbers. The auditors come in for 2 weeks and they start to do all of the audit work. And by the end of March, we have a pretty good handle on where we were at for the prior fiscal year financially. What I've done historically, and it doesn't have to be done this way, is I've waited until the report came out to give this presentation, because I felt like it was important for the board to have the full report so that they understood where we were at. In the future, if the board would like me to do this type of presentation at the beginning of April, I can do that. You just won't get the report till June because the auditors are doing their work in April, March and April. The report is being put together in May, and it doesn't come back from the printer until June. So
There's the rubbish from, everything's done basically in April.
Right.
But this report is not produced
Right.
until.
And there may be some one or two adjusting journal entries that are done in late March or April, but generally speaking, I can give you a pretty good idea of where we're at.
So going forward, what about quarterly updates? Something, I'm not looking for a big, huge presentation either, just maybe something verbal that says whether we're up, on target, or down. I hate to be surprised at budget time.
Sure, and I think it's a great idea. I have no problem if the board would like during staff communication for me to just on a quarterly basis give you an idea of how revenues are coming in and where expenditures are trending. I can do a very brief couple of minutes from my seat without coming up here and doing this type of thing and give you an idea of how things are going. And just as a reminder, every month we're producing financial reports for the board that also present that information, but I can certainly talk about it on a quarterly basis very briefly.
Sure.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks.
Trustee Hare?
Nothing at this time.
Trustee Lang?
Nothing at this time, thanks. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Trustee Vogel?
No, nothing but thank you. Excellent job.
Trustee Hein?
I just want to thank Michael for doing another good job for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Myself, Michael, thank you. And I think the quarterly report thing, the nice surprise with the income tax, the trend already for 2013 is an increase of 7.1%. That's a good thing.
Right.
Our sales tax might be up 2% or 1.5%. That's a good thing to know, and that we're on the right track as a team and working with staff and everybody, that what we're doing is going in the right direction versus the opposite. Or, God forbid, something's wrong, what adjustments do we need to make, and not wait till November or October to talk about it.
Sure.
So I like that idea where we can have a little dissertation with you or a little, something from you every quarter. I think it'll keep us abreast of what's going on.
Okay.
John, anything? Thank you again.
Thanks.
Item 6, discussion, general discussion between the Board of Trustees and staff. I had asked to put this on the agenda tonight because I think what we had started last month with the Plan Commission and creating some dialogue with staff, the board, and the Plan Commission was actually a good thing that night. And I'd like to, twice a year, bring that out to the open and just have questions, concerns, working with our staff. We started the liaison program, which I know we're starting to have some communication with our department heads. And I'd like to start maybe with Trustee Lang. Is there anything that you want to discuss or have a question about, whether it be with John or Jim Ferrillo here or any of the staff members? I think that'd be a good time to ask or get some dialogue going.
Well, I have to say that staff has been pretty responsive when, I was working with John today on some issues and he, I had to leave a message, but he got back to me in 10 minutes. So very responsive. Any other issues? Well, I'm doing some training on Wednesday with the fire department, and Chief's out, but he had his people fill in, and they got me all set up in his absence. So really, there is anything that I have to talk to anyone on staff about has been a very quick response. So I'm very pleased.
Okay, good.
So thank you.
Good. Trustee Brady?
Me? Oh, thank you.
No, the other.
The other Brady.
Wake him up.
The other Brady, the guy next to you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank staff for showing us that, we asked for the impossible last budget because we didn't have the money, and they went even beyond that with John's request for another 10%, and we're holding to it. That shows you, that we do have a good staff, and they do respond. And, the things that I've looked back over the past few years that we've done that saved money for this community, the sewer lining projects, in lieu of replacing all our sewer pipes, which gives us how many more years of service on these sewers without messing with them. Now, we have this street repair that we're working on right now, which could allow us to get farther ahead with keeping up with the maintenance of our streets by just, instead of replacing the whole street, we do the curb lines. And some other towns around us have done it very successfully. We've done it here in certain areas for some utility repair, and it seems to work. All these types of things, they come from staff. They're ideas that help us. And I want to recognize that we do appreciate you guys, what you do. And sincerely, I know we put a lot of pressure on you to get things done and everything else, but it's easier for us to sit up here and say, get it done, and not have to go beyond that. One of the things that I want to say that, we know you're shorthanded. The board getting to the requests that come from up here of our ideas or our things that we want done, and putting a real burden on you because we know you're shorthanded. And I want to ask the board if we should better off prioritizing these things so we're not dumping them on John's staff all at once to get done within a 2-week period. Maybe we should keep a list of the things, the board suggestions or requests that go to staff and prioritize them. This way here, they have the manpower to keep up with them, get them done one at a time instead of helter-skelter, and God knows we lose track of what we're working on after a few months. I think it'd be much better for all of us. I think it'd be easier on staff and give them the opportunity to get their work done. They all have a job. They all know what they have to do, and they do it. We get this running properly. I think it'll all point to one thing. We'll be able to, in the very near future, start adding some help, adding some staff. That's our goal. Because I know right now it's borrowing from Peter to pay Paul to make up crews for public works and community development and everything else. They're scattering to make up crews for repairs, emergencies, this, that, and the other. And I think we have to give them. I give them a kudos for getting it done. Emergencies. Every time we prediction of rain, we all get nervous around here. But we'll be. What is, I'll go back to that thing. When we have a meeting coming up or something about this street.
Actually, next week. It's on the agenda for next week.
Yeah, we're very interested in looking at that. I know I missed seeing what Arlington Heights did. I understand it was a very informative meeting. And I've seen parts of Arlington Heights where they've done this. It looks very, very nice. And if we can get more of the side streets done a lot sooner, it'll be a feather in our cap. And actually a feather in staff's cap. So basically, I just want to let all you guys know how we appreciate you. And I know sometimes you wonder, but believe me, we do. Thank you.
Trustee Brady, go ahead, Mr. President, if I may. The President and I have discussed doing our priority session meetings again, and we plan to hold that again in the fall. So that'll be an opportunity for the board to bring in all the minor projects, all the major projects, and for staff as well, and we'll go through the same process of putting them all on the board, weeding them out, categorizing them, and then putting them in order for finding our 5 top priorities, which allows staff, to have know what the board's vision is, and allows us the opportunity to know where to concentrate our efforts. Well, so we're going to do that again this fall.
I think we have to go a little bit beyond our 5 priorities for the year, and then look back. Well, did we get anything done for last year? A year is a long time, and I'm talking about on a smaller scale, the things that we see that need fixing around the community, and ask staff or you to get them done. And it's because I call different departments. I try to copy you in every one of them, so you know what's going on. And if somebody calls me with a problem, and I'm not saying you have to prioritize these here, but things that can't be done right away, we should put on a list and have staff work on it. You could, then it'd be up to you or us to decide on where that priority is. Is it an emergency? Is it something that's going to take time and money? How is it going to, and put it on the list? Because I know everybody has their pet projects, more or less, that come up.
And that's a great idea, and I think we could do that actually during these types of meetings where the board considers the other members' ideas. What we need to make sure is, what is your idea is agreeable to the rest of the board.
That's what I'm saying.
And I know that that's where you're going. So sure, we can.
Before I took the seat, I went to a seminar, a 2-day seminar, Oak Brook or somewhere like that. And several of the communities use work orders, just not for the sake of anything, just keeping track of all the things that have to be done, so that you can each one of the trustees could track it. What's next on the list. You could prioritize the work orders or in the line of how important they are, and when you perceive them to be done. It'd be a simple thing, and maybe we should go into something like that, because I tell you, so many things, we request so many things, you forget. You can't keep that whole list to yourself, and everybody forgets.
I read them all down.
Okay. But anyways, that's something, a little food for thought. But anyways, John, you and your staff, I think it's going pretty good, and I am very pleased with the way everybody's reacting to us.
Thank you.
Trustee Vogel?
I'd like to echo both Trustee Lang and Brady's comments. Staff has done an excellent job responding anytime I've talked to them. And the only thing I'd like to caution them on is the code enforcement. I'd still like to see something being done. That I know a couple months back we asked for the other departments to kind of monitor, the village and refer it to code enforcement if there's a problem. I'd like to see that stepped up somehow. There's nothing more disheartening than to drive into the village and see the beautiful landscaping that the village takes care of, the trees, the flowers, and everything else, and then to go into some of the residential neighborhoods and see the grass, 18 inches tall weeds and garbage laying in the front yard, and nobody doing anything about it. And I know it's not easy. It's not our responsibility. A lot of the houses are in foreclosure. They're owned by the banks. The real estate agents should be responsible, but somehow or another we're going to have to either beef up the penalties or figure out a way to enforce it, because it really is, it's sad. A couple of people have told me over the weekend that they had graduation parties at their house, and the neighbors, people are going in their backyard, and the neighbor's yard has got 50 garbage bags laying in it. And I said, well, call the village. Well, okay. Some of them are hesitant to call, others call us. So again, anything we can do, it's the residents' tax dollars that take care of this, and any support we can give to the residents in that area would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Kruger?
Well, being the new girl, the staff has been beyond welcoming and responsive to me, because Lord knows, John, I've asked 1,000 questions. And you guys have been great, and I've learned quite a bit. And being a liaison with Tony, we have certainly started a dialogue, and I have a very big respect for the Public Works Group and what you guys try and handle on a daily basis, because you could probably do all the best intentions to get your list of work done, and then a major rain event comes, and just, it's the biggest monkey wrench in the world to you guys, and I think you handle it beautifully. Certainly on my side of town, and I think everywhere else too. As far as questions, more questions for anybody, I'd like to share one that I got from a resident, and maybe Chief Benson, this could be more for you, but someone had asked me about whether or not the village had a CERT program or a community emergency response team. They shared some information about FEMA IS 317, which was a course that someone could take if they wanted to participate in community emergency response teams. And I thought that we had some kinds of offering. It might not be called CERT, but maybe you could tell me what we offer. I know we have CARE.
We do. Our version of CERT is our CARE program.
Okay.
Very similar, trained the same way.
So I could direct this person who's interested to our CARE program?
Yes, the coordinator is Angela Burrell.
Got it.
Chief Benson, can you just give the acronym so everybody understands what CARE is?
Community Assisted Relief Efforts.
Thank you.
Got it. Thank you, both.
Anything else?
No, not
No,
for me.
okay.
I'm good, I'm done.
Trustee Hein?
Thank you. I too am very proud of the responsiveness that we get from our staff in all levels. It's quite amazing to me that some of the work that we get out of these departments with such a little amount of employees and such, and we've gone through some trying times, but we're coming out of it very well. One of the things that I would like to see us not lose sight of is the bus plan that we had worked on a couple of years ago, and looking to put a bus system in the village of Wheeling with PACE and so on and so forth. I believe Trustee Brady was working on that very hard. We were very close to purchasing buses and all that kind of good stuff. And that also ties into the active transportation plan that's been put together by the village of Wheeling. You know, we are starting to grow, and our retail areas are starting to develop into much larger developments, and some of the ones that we do have that it just came on board are very successful. And I think we have to take a different look at this transportation plan and how we're going to implement some of these things, and identify the enterprise zones in the downtown areas and so on and so forth, and start putting together some programs that will coincide with the friendly pedestrian ways for some of these people to shop in our community. But all in all, I think staff has done a great job. The only one thing that I would like, as far as things coming before the board, is to have just a little more time when we have a major project coming before us, and like the TSCA report is going to be coming up on the 8th of July, and I'm sure it's going to be very extensive in the presentation and such, but I'd like just a little more time and maybe have that report a little earlier so that we can go over it ourselves and be able to respond to it rather than get it on Friday and have to do something by Monday. But all in all, I think we're stepping in the right direction, and staff has been very, very responsive to this board. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Trustee Hare?
If I may, I'm sorry. Trustee Hein, PACE was invited to come to the board meeting,
Right.
not specifically to talk about
Yes.
this
Yes.
particular program you're talking about. They will be here on the 15th of July.
Good, I'll bring out all my paperwork.
Well, like I said, they're not, the representative that's coming isn't here to discuss that particular program. That was an internal decision, which we can certainly talk about, but it's really an opportunity for PACE to come and advertise their services and advocate for what they can provide to our residents and hear what you have to say about what you feel the needs of the community are.
You'll be starting all over again, because the team that I worked with years ago, they're all moved up in the company or left. I still got the bus routes and everything, but I think they changed the program considerably. I don't even know what they do anymore.
Yeah, it's not even offered anymore. The grant that allowed us to purchase the vehicles is no longer available.
They're going to lease them to us, but whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks. Trustee Hare?
Thank you. I want to go in a different direction than my colleagues on the board. I just wanted to see if staff would look. They did. All kidding aside, I think you guys do an excellent job. I know you've been very responsive to the questions that I've had for you as well. We all know there's concerns in the community that need to be addressed, and we don't need to go over each and every one of them. I know it takes time, and hopefully together we, the board, and you, the staff and the employees, can work together for a better community, because that's what brings us all here. And again, I do want to thank each and every one of you for the outstanding job that you do.
Thank you. Trustee, Clerk Simpson?
No, I agree with the board.
Okay.
I
Well, no doubt, staff does a good job based, with everything they have going. I guess my challenge is in the last couple months that I've been here and communicating on a daily basis with John and Jim Ferrillo and all of you. I've reached out to all of you guys, and I welcome the thought of what can we do to make ourselves better? What new ideas can we bring to the board? What new ideas do you guys have that maybe for one reason or another is afraid to say anything or don't want to say anything? There's always been issues regarding customer service, and I think customer service is such a big thing. We all, every one of us, have gotten calls numerous times from somebody who's trying to build a deck or try to do something to get an answer from a department stating, well, this will take 3 weeks or this will take a month. Right, wrong, or indifferent, if that is the case, what can we do to expedite the process? Because those folks who are building in this community or who are spending money in this community are our customers. They pay all our salaries. So I think what I try to look for from everybody in welcome, and I've done this with all the commissioners so far, except for the seniors, I haven't been there yet, but to welcome input, dialogue. What can we throw out there that can make our community even better than what it is today? What new ideas can we bring to the table to bring to this board and to the village manager to say, boy, that's a great idea. We should be doing this. What are other towns, our neighboring towns, doing that's working for them that we haven't tried yet? I think this is what this board, and this is what I like to see, come from this great staff that we have. I compliment each and every one of you. For the last 12 years that I've been up here, every year it's always been cuts, and you guys have all made it happen. You've cross-trained. Some run 2 departments, some run 3 departments, but you're doing it, and we haven't jeopardized the core services of this community. But at this point, how do we get to that next level? We hired a new economic development director who I call our PR guy. He's out there bringing in business or trying to bring in business to create jobs and sell this community. Well, as part of his team is each and every one of you and us. How do we make his job easier where it's an easy sale for him based on everything that we're all trying to accomplish here for the future? We talk about priorities, and we're going to talk about priorities in the spring and in the fall. What was the list of priorities that we didn't get done based on the priorities that we set 3 years ago? Let's start there. Those priorities 3 years ago, today might be a bad deal. May not be a good thing to have. What do we need to tweak it? Why hasn't it been done? How do we get to that next level? I'm the type of person, if we got something on the desk here, and on the table here, or on John's long list of things to do, how do we get those things done? How do we get them off the table? Let's find ways not to procrastinate. Let's find ways to get things done and get to a different level where we want to be, all of us as a team. That's what I like to see. I speak with John, our EDC guy, all the time. What can we do to help? He's a book of knowledge, which I enjoy listening to because he knows people out there. He knows what works, in his opinion, based on the business that he's in. I've spoken with Tony. I've spoken with Mark. I speak with the chiefs constantly. What can we do to make things better? How do we become more business friendly? How do we bring those ideas and thoughts? What dollars are out there, if any, that we can go and knock on and try to get to help us, whether it be streetlight program or the Wolf Road project? What doors do we need to knock on to get these projects that we've been talking about for years? Wolf Road's been talked about since I've been up here. Is it done? No. Why? I got the thing from the Northwest Municipal Conference regarding the task force that they have, and they meet in Barrington, and the millions of dollars that is being allocated to the state of Illinois, just to see that all these other communities are getting projects done this year and scheduled for next year. And I look at the list, Wheeling's not even on it. Why? And I got it on my desk. I got it today. Why? These are the things collectively as a team we need to fight for and believe in to get those things done. So, and we're talking $70-some million. We can't get a piece of that pie to finish our streetscape. We talk about the TIF district that you spoke about, the town center TIF, that is deficit spending because there's nothing being generated because nothing's being done there and nothing's being done to improve that west side of town. We need to do that. That's how we got the Crossroads TIF. In essence, gave us the other TIFs along Milwaukee Avenue because we took the lead and got things done. So, again, I'm looking forward to the prioritizing thing. I'm more and more looking forward to maybe better outlining communication regarding the staff reports that we got, which is good, don't get me wrong, but maybe more clear. Maybe seeing more ideas coming from the different department heads, and how can we make things work? How do we become more business-friendly? How do we get things that you get direction from, whether it be community development or the fire or police department, and getting these things done in a timely manner? The ideas should be coming from staff and the manager. It's wonderful to have the elected officials come up in here with a wish list, but that wish list should be done by you guys, because you guys are the professional, and these are things that I want to see you guys actually take pride in and say, this is good for Wheeling, and we need to fight for this and do more of that. Not that you haven't been doing, but we need to see more of it, and how we can help as elected officials get that done. So again, you guys are doing great. I mean, great communication. You've made the transition with me. Wonderful. Wonderful. I mean, we talk all the time. You get the answers. Jim Ferrillo's been good and following through and getting things done. And God only knows, Wheeling's a piece of the pie, of the big pie that you're trying to do with other communities and trying to orchestrate it all. But we need to work together, and it starts with the commissions, and I think we started that with the Plan Commission. I felt good about it. I think they did. I think our staff did. I think the elected officials did that night. But it's all about talking and communicating and creating that dialogue. So please, as far as I'm concerned, don't be afraid to come up with an idea and work with all of us here to get to that next level. And I like this 6-month thing with the budget thing. I think Mary brought up a good point with that. I like to hear that from you, Michael, on a quarterly basis. John with the priority stuff. You know, John's got his list. Okay, but let's let him cut off with the list that he has today, so we can start maybe a new list and give him a break a little bit too on getting some of these things done. But please, again, I welcome the ideas, and I think you guys have done a great job, and I really truly believe, based on the trend that I'm seeing, John, and you and I spoke at the Korean cultural thing the other day, even the sales tax trend in the region has gone down a little bit the first quarter, but we're seeing a spike in Wheeling's part of it. So there's things we're doing that is actually good, and it's helping our community. And I don't want to, I know you know the numbers, John, but if you want to elaborate, since I'm your liaison over there, but those kind of things makes me feel really good about what's the trend that we're going with this year.
You know, I've been on the job about 8 weeks. One of the first things I did was conduct a market study so I could better understand what's our batting average, what retail categories might represent an opportunity. And basically our retail sales, I looked at them for the first quarter of 2012 versus the first quarter of 2013, and we were up about 8%. And some of the other municipalities in the metropolitan area have not been as fortunate as Wheeling. We had a Walmart Supercenter that expanded, and some other retailers. We got some new restaurants. So our sales are up, and we're about a $500 million community. So, you know, my role is really to focus on the 5 TIF districts. That's where we have economic development tools in our toolbox to get things done. But it's all part of a package, all the things that you mentioned. You know, how do we enhance our image? How do we enhance the appearance of Wheeling? Some of the public and private amenities at Dundee and Milwaukee Avenue, for example, the fountains, it provides that perception of the village. And so we try to do that in all our promotional materials. We're updating our promotional materials, and we're collaborating with the business community. I mean, there's so many things that, you know, need to be done that have been done. I'm just looking forward to working with the board and the staff to, you know, continue some of the great things that have happened and get that town center TIF going, because retailers, there's a herd mentality where they're going to, if they see one retailer, then that brings additional retailers to that retail node. So we'll look at the commercial corridors and then the individual nodes within those corridors. And I think the TIF district is TIF districts is a logical place to start.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Anybody else? Yeah. Official communication. Start with Trustee Brady.
You know, just to piggyback on what Trustee Vogel brought up during the staff thing, I've noticed driving around about our weed ordinance. Can we send a citation to the governor or to Periwinkle about the county and the state roads? Their weeds are waist high. you know, how do they get away with not cutting in our village? How does our ordinance handle that?
We can't cite the county for a wheeling code violation. We should call them and let them know what's going on.
And we have done that.
Yeah, because it's, as you drive, especially Milwaukee Avenue is one of the worst as you're coming in from the south. You can't even walk down that sidewalk by that one retaining wall there. The weeds are so thick coming up through the cracks in the concrete. Thank you. That's it.
Trustee Kruger?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Trustee Hare?
Nothing, thanks.
Trustee Vogel?
Nothing, thank you.
Trustee Lang?
Nothing. Thanks, staff.
There you go. Trustee Hein?
Nothing at this time.
Clerk Simpson?
Nothing at this time.
Well, I won't let it be a clean sweep. Why don't we give an update on July 3rd? John, you want to say something on that? The venue or where we're at?
Sure. Perhaps, well, first an update on the financial end. We've raised nearly $30,000. I should say we've received nearly $30,000 in sponsorship monies from local businesses. So we're very happy that it looks like this was a successful campaign in order to help offset some of the costs for July 3rd. And then a reminder that it does start 6 p.m. on July 3rd at the village-owned property just west of Village Hall, the old Wix site. There will be 2 bands performing starting at 6 p.m. We have a blues band, and at about 7:15 p.m. we have Midnight, which feature the parents of Haley Reinhardt, Harry and Patty Reinhardt. And then at dusk, approximately 9:15, we will have our fireworks show. So we encourage everyone to bring a lawn chair. It is all grassed in that area. However, you know, it's not exactly manicured lawn. It's certainly good for a picnic, but suggest everyone bring a lawn chair, a picnic dinner, and your family. I think it'll be a great event.
Thank you. Executive session this evening, we do have under pending, probable, and/or imminent litigation and the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee or employees of the village. I entertain a motion.
So move.
Motion by Trustee Hare, second by Trustee Brady. Roll call.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Brady?
Yes.
Trustee Hein?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Hare?
Yes.
Trustee Kruger?
Yes.
President Jers?
Yes. We'll convene into executive session at 7:45. Good night, everyone.
Go Hawks.